Day 21. Today, oh, I can actually walk on the snow today. I can actually walk on the snow. Yeah. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I had no idea. Still doing my long-winded rants that I usually do. Want to give it a little more structure. So today, because again, this vlog thing is a work in progress for me. Today I wanted to do, or rather address, one of the writing prompts that I haven't gotten a chance to write, or haven't chosen to write for yet. But I figured talking about something and communicating something, speaking about something, it's kind of the same as writing. It's similar. It's an expression of an idea. It's just another way to communicate. And the prompt for today, which I thought was really good, it said, describe an aha moment where you realized a past moment had shaped you. And you know, if someone were to ask me this, I'd probably think about it for a little bit, and I'll be like, wait, don't most of past moments shape you? Probably some more than other ones. It's kind of a given. So I thought about this, and then I realized, let me talk about something that's not like, it's not intense, it's not crazy, it's not like, looking back on it now, because I was talking to my baby mama about it. I was talking to her about this today, and it's plainly obvious to me now. Incredibly obvious, but it didn't make sense to me when I found out how this past moment has shaped me. I didn't like, it was like a sudden click, like, oh yeah, right, that actually makes a lot of sense. So let me give you some context of this. So I think I mentioned before in some of these videos, I am a military vet. I was in the Army for almost 6 years. I actually did reserves first when I was still in high school. So I ended up going through basic training, through rifle marksman training. I did the whole basic training curriculum between my junior and senior years of high school. So that summer, when I was 17, I was thrown into this pack. I don't want to say thrown with the wolves, because that's not what it was, but give me a taste of what military culture was kind of like and what it's going to be like. Granted, when I did go active duty and I had to redo part of basic, simply because it had been like over a year since I had done any of that stuff, to just stay current and up to date with my skills, I did have to redo part of basic. Because if people aren't familiar with this, in the U.S. Army, if you are an infantryman, your basic and your like specialty job training is actually merged into one giant training block. So you do the basic first, and then you do what you would consider the advanced individual training, which is all the infantry skills, all the grunt shit, which is basically just, it's like an extension of basic, because basic training really is just, I'm not sure if they still call it this. Shh, come on, let's go. Don't know if they still call it this. Let's go, head up. But it's basic soldier skills. What's an infantryman? It's just a soldier, someone who's gonna go out there and fight. So you just work more on the fundamentals, and they throw you in with some more advanced weaponry, or more advanced weapon systems that you'll come across when you get to your unit. Anyways, it's not important. What is important is that I was 17, again, going through basic training with just, I'm pretty sure I was the youngest one there. Most people were about 18, 19. A couple old dudes, call them old. They were in their mid-20s, some later 20s. I think we maybe had one guy who was in his 30s, and he was considered like the old man of the group. Come on, get up. So I did that. And then after high school, I had to go through part of basic training again, because I had to go to the AIT portion of it as well. So I did part of basic all over again, which sucked. But again, I didn't mind. I was 18 at the time. I was like, oh, cool. I'll just get more training. So I was in for a while, again, almost 6 years. I deployed twice to Iraq, never to Afghanistan. I was only in Iraq. And if you think about it, young man, I got out of it when I was about 23 years old. So my first deployment, I was around, I think I was 19 years old, 19 to 20. And then my second deployment, I was 21 to 22, I believe. So developmentally, your prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until well into your, I think it's your mid-20s. I think say around age 26 is when it's fully developed. So your brain is still creating associations between the neurons in your brain. Your brain is still being shaped, it's still being formed, and the prefrontal cortex is associated with logical, rational thinking. They say it's where the decisions are made. I don't believe that. What I think it is, it's when the mind or your consciousness is making these decisions, it shows up in that part of the brain. That's where it gets translated from what you would call the intent or the motivation to make a decision. It shows up on the brain. Come on, let's go. It shows up on the brain during that portion. But again, if you do have damage to that part, people do exhibit the lack of logical, rational thinking. Anyways, again, that's not important. What is important is that that's when the brain is being developed. That's when these parts of your brain that allow for this kind of decision making, they're still being formed. I wasn't even 20 yet. First time we got blown up by an IED. Come on, let's go. So the tempo of missions when you're overseas, when you're stateside, is just training. You train, you train, you train, and you train. If you're not training, you're doing a lot of standing around. And all the veterans, I'm sure, have all had this experience where you're literally sitting around doing absolutely nothing at all. But instead of them just letting you go home, them just letting you get an extra start to your weekend, commanders, the people in charge, will keep you there. I never understood that. Never understood that. Kind of understand it now. A lot of them probably didn't want to go home. They didn't have a lot of happy family situations, so they enjoyed being around an environment where they're top dog or whatever it is, and they're in charge and they're in control. They have that sense of power. But again, it's just a theory of mine. Anyways, my brain's still developing at this age, so the tempo of missions, again, stateside, boring. You're not really doing much. Hold on, hold on. You're not really doing much. And if you are, you're just training. And it's not just training, but you're also rushing from one thing to another one, to this and that. So it's chaos. So the tempo that you kind of pick up on is that there's these moments of just frustration and boredom. And I mean intense frustration, intense boredom, because you can't just leave. It's not a job that you can just quit, versus where you're at a 9 to 5, you got a manager being a fucking asshole, or you got someone who's just being stupid, or they're trying to play these little silly power games with you. You can always quit. You can always just go find another job. The military, you're stuck there. You can't leave, per se. You can't just disappear from the problem. What you gotta do is stick with it and wait. So there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of boredom, a lot of testosterone too, because you have just a bunch of dudes hanging out together. There's no women to help diffuse some of the stupidity that comes with being young and being male. So it gets channeled into finding ways to alleviate that boredom. So a lot of what we did, again, I'm talking about the tempo now, just strictly stateside, being in the States. As a grunt, you practice grunt skills. What does that mean? Some of the younger sergeants, what they'd find pleasure in is anytime there's a new guy or a cherry who showed up to the unit, They want to find out what he's about, because again, these are men that you're going to be deployed with. These are men you're going to go to war with. You need to find out quick what kind of character they have when they're thrown in challenges. You need to find out quick how they react to stress and pressure. One of the first things that, again, I'm sure this is probably universal, it's not considered hazing. It's not called hazing, they don't haze anymore. But you practice your soldiering skills, you practice hand-to-hand combat, you practice what they call combatives, you practice ways of choking each other out. So what you do, again, the tempo, nothing going on, everyone's bored, you're kind of just waiting for something to happen, or they're waiting for something to happen, but no one really knows, because whatever fucking reason, who knows. Every time I go into the office, it just sounds like they were sitting there just bullshitting. So again, I don't know what goes up in the upper echelons of management of these non-commissioned officers and officers, but I know what happens at the ground floor, at the grunt level. What would happen is the sergeants would be bored, they'd also be frustrated, they're trying to go home, beat cheeks with their wife, hopefully sexually, not physically. Well, that does happen, unfortunately. Just again, I think some of the men who are in the military probably stay in the military because it's a way for them to feel powerful besides going home and beating their kids, which is something that they talk about. But again, off topic. So you practice choking each other out, and the rationale behind this is if you get deployed, you're in a close quarters combat situation, your rifle's not really effective, because essentially by being this close to an enemy, your advantages, it's neutralized. Come on, Ben, let's go. It's neutralized. You can't, this close to somebody, you can't really shoot them. What do you do next? Use your hands, use your body, use your rifle, you use what you have on you to fight. So what they would do is they would put us in these sand pits. So think of like these little beach sand kind of little exercise areas, and they just take the new guy from 1st platoon, the new guy from 3rd platoon, dead center, go see who can make the other person tap out. And again, even though a lot of these dudes are just full of fucking anger and frustration, they just want to hurt somebody, what it really is, it's like a gentleman's game. You're not actually trying to hurt the other person. You're not actually trying to make them bleed. You're not trying to break them. What you are trying to do is try and choke them out and get them to essentially give up without hurting them too bad. Right? Sometimes you gotta do a little bit of pain. The reason for that is you don't actually want to hurt these dudes, because even if they get on your nerves, they're annoying, whatever it is, these are the people that you are gonna go overseas with. The last thing you want is some sort of stupid ass beef between you and him. The thing gets carried over there, and then the back of your mind, you're always thinking, can I trust this person? You can't have that. You can't have that in a unit. You can't have that in a tribe. Trust has to be 100%, and you have to know the strengths and weaknesses of who you're with, so that way you know without thinking about it, like your neurons are firing together and wiring together and working as one single unit to transmit some information in your brain to something that you can understand consciously. Can't have outliers, you can't have stragglers. So they put you in these situations, you learn a lot about yourself, you learn what it's like to get choked out, you learn what it's like to choke somebody out. It's fun. I know some people it doesn't sound like fun, but to me that is a lot of fun. That is one of the things that I do miss about the military, just that kind of brotherhood, that kind of playful rough housing, that again, it's all in the spirit of just testing each other. And that's the one thing that I do love about the military, is that essentially it's just a test. It's a test of where you're at, it's a test of where others are at, and you help test other people in the exact same way, and hopefully come together, work as one unit. That's what's for life, right? So that's the temple of being stateside, of being in training here. It's these long periods of boredom and frustration coupled with these short moments of excitement, because most of these combative battles don't last very long. They a couple minutes, maybe some 5 minutes. What is up there? Huh? What do you see up there, Finn? What are you smelling? Hey! What are you looking at? No. No, no, no. Come here. Come on. Come on. No. You don't fuck with the wildlife out here, Finn. Let the wildlife be, okay? Come on. So again, tempo is long periods of frustration and boredom, followed by short, intense periods of adrenaline, of pure focus, where you're not, if you're thinking about something else while this dude's trying to choke you out, you're probably gonna get choked out. So you learn, I didn't even say you learned because it's not conscious. Again, I didn't think about this until many years later when I was out and I was dealing with something completely different. Come here. But that's the rhythms that my brain, my prefrontal cortex, again, still being developed, my body, it's what it picked up on growing up. And I do say growing up because no one's grown up at 18. You're a fucking kid at 18. You think you're a man. You think you're a confident, competent, conscious adult, but you're not. You're a kid who's still in the process of learning and growing and absorbing information around you, for better or for worse. So having that been like the unconscious foundation of the rhythms of life, of what my environment was like. Once you get deployed, guess what it is? Come here, let's go, come on. It's more of that. It's a lot more of that. It's a lot more intense because now this shit's actually life or death. Now you have something to lose, your life. Now it's not just about you. Now it's, if I'm worried about this problem that I have over here, this situation or something I have going on, some fight I had with my girlfriend, whatever the fuck it is back home, now you gotta learn how to take all those emotions, those worries, those doubts, those anxieties, all that noise of your everyday life. And again, everyone has this. Everyone has these problems that they go in their daily life, these less than ideal situations, relationships, annoyances, frustrations, times of boredom. Come here, let's go. Times of stress. We all have that. But when you're deployed, it's scaled at a much higher intensity. So again, 18 and 19, 14 months was my first deployment. 14 months of just that, kinds of intense boredom, frustration, sitting around for missions, or at least in the beginning, our mission tempo was one or 2 days off and then 2 days on, and we just cycled through that. Come on, let's go up. Versus like a regular 9 to 5 that, or rather not even 9 to 5. Say kids going to college here in America, they don't really have schedules like that. The schedules they have are dictated by whatever classes they're taking and whatever that is. That could be very chaotic. That could be late evening classes. That could be in the morning. Again, who knows? For those who are older, who are working 9 to 5 classes in the evening. Again, there's so many variations of whatever rhythms of the environment are out there, or whatever schedules out there. But the military, it's all dictated by where the tempo of your mission is. What is the rhythm of the missions you guys are engaged in? What's the overall picture? And how is that going to be distributed to you as a unit and to your platoon? How are you all going to work through all that? What kind of missions will you take? What time will you do them? Right? So for our first deployment, it was that. A couple days on, 1 or 2 days off, over and over again. And what you learn is that when you're on, you have to be on. Your focus has to be laser tight. There can be zero distractions, zero anything that is distracting you from whatever's going on in the present moment and whatever you're doing in that present moment. And because it's so intense, because the stakes are so high, you go in a state of hypervigilance or hyperfocus is another way that I like to call it. Now what happens to the body when you do that, right? Again, your brain is being rewired. The plasticity of the neurons in your brain are being formed. Your body is learning how to hold tension and how to release that tension. And As the weeks go by, the months go by, it becomes a habit. It becomes how you operate in the world. So again, now I'm operating moments of intense hyper focus, followed by moments of just complete scatterbrain chaos, where I wouldn't call it chaos, just unstructured free time, whether it's exercising or doing maintenance. Sure, there's things like doing maintenance on your equipment, on your weapons, on your weapon systems, your sight systems, whatever it is that you're doing. There's periods of that, but when you have free time, you have downtime. People sleep, people nap, people eat, they work out, they watch a lot of movies. A lot of dudes watch a lot of porn. God damn, I didn't know there's so much variety of porn until I was deployed. Like, holy shit. You're not taught how to come down from those highs of hypervigilance. That first time you get blown up, you almost go into a state of awe. And luckily, no one from our platoon died. No one got seriously injured, but it is a wake-up call when you realize, oh, this shit is for real. I can actually die. So every time I go out on these patrols, every time I go out on these raids, every time I kick in this door, every time I do this, every time I do that, every time I put on this gear and go out of the wire, I may not come back. Once that hits you, you take every step before you leave the wire 100% serious, 100% focused, because you don't want to be that dude who forgot to fucking check his batteries for his thermal sight or his night vision goggles. Come on, let's go. You don't want to be that dude who forgets that, which is again why the leaders take it upon themselves to have these inspections. Sometimes you feel like you get treated like a kid, but again, it's just to make sure, because sometimes someone's not going to take it that seriously. They'll be distracted. They'll let the noise from their outside world and the personal life come into the mission that needs to get done. So you take everything more seriously, and you take everything, you're more focused with it. You don't let yourself get distracted by mission prep, by make sure you're getting ready to go out of the wire. Because again, you don't want to be that dude who's a mag empty. You don't want to be that dude who's not ready in case shit pops off, because you could potentially cost your life and the life of someone else. And then once you leave the wire, it's another form of hypervigilance, of awe, of focus, because now everything seems so vivid. You're noticing little things on the side of the road. You're noticing little cracks that wasn't there on that street the last week you were here. You notice little off-colored berms that are just a slight gradient darker than the rest of the dirt that's next to it. Like, you become so attuned to these little variations in the environment, especially if it's environments or AOs, little towns, cities, the units you're working with. You just become very hyper focused on details, because those little details, that little color, that little blue or black tape that's hanging off on the side of the road, that could be the difference between you noticing that IED that was laid out just a week before, because they've also been paying attention to you and watching your movements and how you move in the environment and how you're letting yourself get caught up in patterns. So they notice that, and then they try to catch you on one of those patterns. Come on, fam. Come on. Or if you're paying attention, you notice, you catch shit like that. You notice the IED, you call it. Next thing you know, 7-8 hours later, sometimes it's quicker, but a lot of times you're way out there waiting for a while, waiting for EOD to show up to dismantle this bomb. Boom, you get the rocket in the pit of your belly, and then you continue with your mission. Like, those moments, you really notice this shit is for real. And if this little attention to detail, if I'm sleeping, if I'm tired, if I'm not paying attention to what's around me, I could cost my life or the life of someone else. And that is a burden no one wants to bear. So we become super focused, super hyper vigilant. And again, 18, 19, right? First deployment, second deployment, 21, 22. Again, another round of this intensity, the scale of these missions where you're constantly just focus, and then boom, you come down from it. Now you're bored, you're stressed out, the anxieties of whatever's going back home are onto you, or maybe someone in your platoons bullshitting, or again, whatever it is. Extreme highs, hyper focus, extreme lows of complete scatterbrain, boredom, and frustration. And again, you're not taught how to properly deal with boredom and frustration. Like I don't think I've heard anybody, and again, I'm pretty ignorant, haven't heard anybody discuss the purpose of frustration or the purpose of boredom. Because if we as human beings are capable of going into these states of mind where everything is frustrating us, or we're just completely bored out of our minds, it's a type of energy that is keeping our brain locked into a certain kind of frequency. And that sounds like woo-woo shit, but it's for a reason. Like I used to hate letting myself get bored, but now I realize, yo, it's a part of a process. And again, I know this is a long-winded story. I'm just trying to give a lot of context as to why my aha moment was so obvious. Going between states of extreme lows, boredom, frustration, maybe a little bit of depression, sadness, lots of anger. Depression and anger, kind of the same energy. One's expressed outwardly, one is held inwardly. Yin and yang, push pull, in and out. If it's not expressed, if it is not moved through the body, and again, your body's learning the rhythms of the environment and it's picking up on them subconsciously, which is why I say it's so important to come out to nature and just be with it. Come out here and be with it. You don't even have to do anything. Come here, Finn. You don't have to do anything, right, Finn? You don't have to do anything. Come out and be with it so you can harmonize with it, so you can be with it. As you pick up the temples of the environment, and that becomes your operating state, that is your undercurrent, energetic rhythm and flow through life. And left the military at 23, so 17 to 23, almost 6 years. During the very formative time of my life, again, young man, still his prefrontal cortex still not fully formed. What's the most people who have undergone traumatic experiences or suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the first things that they do is they self-medicate. Why do they do that? It's because their unconscious is holding on to all this energy that hasn't been expressed, that hasn't been channeled through the body, that hasn't been released into the world. The temples, the ups, the highs, the lows of all that are still, they're in disharmony within you. And I think in people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, people who suffer from complex PTSD, survivor's guilt, a lot of these things that afflicts veterans when they come back from the war, it's because all that energy is still there, except it's not being expressed. And because they come back into another temple, another rhythm of civilian life, 9 to 5, going to school, getting a job, harmonizing with that, it's difficult because they're surrounded by people who don't know what it's like to operate in that kind of world, where there's a hyper present, hyper focused moment to moment to moment to moment kind of living, where the environment and the people in that environment can kill you. To come down from that and to come to a life where it's kind of that environment's been neutralized, the temple of all that is dull, it's bored, it's apathetic, it's indifferent, it's complacent, it doesn't care, so you can kind of just cruise through life without really paying attention to what you're doing. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to come back from a deployment, from a war zone, and then reintegrate into a society that's not built for you. It's not, doesn't even care about you. They're probably still asking, oh shit, we're still fighting that war? Oh really, is that where you were at? Wow, I didn't know that's still going on. So having that be the foundation of your operating system, of how you operate in the world, how you move in the world, how you communicate, how you release your energy, how you store energy. Because remember, anger is not a bad thing. But what anger is, it's destructive if it's not handled properly. It's like fire. You can burn yourself with it, or with skillful use, you can create technology with it. You can create tools with it. Anger is the same thing. It's the same kind of energy, which is why we describe it like something that's stored and something that explodes out. When we stored it for too long, we haven't been able to manage it carefully. So when you're used to this kind of tempo and this kind of environment, I remember talking to a psychiatrist, and I remember talking to, and this was in a creative writing context. I had just, they were asking, like, and I'll post the link. It's similar because she talks about monitoring your energy levels and knowing where you're at, and then whether you're a night person or a day person, where your energy is the highest. I love getting up early, but it's through physical activities. But I also love staying up at night, because that's when I do most of my creative work. And this was a cycle that I've realized that I just kind of unconsciously had developed. And I never understood why until one day we were talking, chatting it up, and she starts laughing, and she's like, well, yeah, duh. She's like, how long were you deployed for? I was like, well, I did 2. She's like, okay, and what were your mission tempos? Like, what were you doing? I was like, well, during the day, usually just sleeping, exercising, prepping our gear and our systems to get ready for the missions. And what time were the missions? Oh, at night. Oh, like around what time? Dependent, but usually anywhere between from like 8 to like midnight, maybe 1, 2 in the morning. She's like, oh, and what did that require? She's like, well, it required preparation. It required a state of hypervigilance, because you never knew if that was going to be the day you weren't going to come back. She starts laughing. She's like, and I'm still not getting at this point. I was like, okay, yeah, what's your point? She's like, your brain was still forming at that age. You were a kid when this was happening. The brain was still being formed. Your dendrites, your everything, the physiological, the biochemical, neurological components of your body were still being formed as you were going through this. Because of the intensity of those experiences, what do you think that did to you? It shaped them. It shaped how you operate. It shaped how you focus. It shaped how you rest, how you recover, how you do all of that. That's why it's easier for you at night in silence, because again, usually when we go out on missions, or when we used to go out on missions, no one talked. We just did, and we did it all in silence. The quieter, the better. The darker, the better, because that's when you move. That's when you can't be seen. And I'm the same way with my writing. Nice quiet spot. I have just enough light so where I can see my screen or my notebook, and I'll just write. And I'll write with an intensity that I find hard to be able to maintain, a focus that's like, that I find it hard to do during the day. And it's because of that. She's like, yeah, that's exactly why. You formed a core component of who you were in war. So your creative process is based on that. That's where the rhythm of your process is. It's in that. It's in those patrols. It's in those kicking in those doors at night. It's in all of that. That's why you find it so much easier to do it at night, because that's when you did the stuff that you needed to get done to survive. Boom. Blew my fucking brain wide open. I was like, this is so incredibly obvious that I didn't even think about that. I always wondered too, was like, why is it I prefer doing creative things at night? Why does I prefer at night in silence? I can just let go of myself, let go of whatever perfections I think I need to do, or whatever self-conscious ideas I have about myself, that this isn't good enough, that, oh fuck, this shit's so hard. Like, all that really does disappear at night when I'm getting ready to write. And it's because, again, the mission temples of being overseas, being deployed, is that you don't have that kind of self-talk stopping you from just doing things, because you trained, you trust yourself, you trust that you have your equipment ready. Yeah, now it's only a pen and paper, but you trust that you are capable of going out there, coming back alive. Because if you don't have that belief in yourself, you're not going to make it. And having that belief, with writing, it's the same thing. You got to have the belief first that you can write. You got to have the belief first that you can come up with something. You got to have the belief and the faith that even if you don't know, when that first bomb does go off, when that first bullet does go whizzing by your head, when that danger erupts, you have to have the faith that you're gonna react and focus and dial in and do what needs to get done to get the mission accomplished. Writing is the same thing. At night, that self-talk, those all of that noise that keeps me, or that I struggle with during the day, the distractions, all that goes away until all there is just writing, and it becomes a flow state. It's the same thing that would happen out there on missions. Is I think sometimes you'll hear veterans, I don't know if veterans will tell us civilians this, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell the civilians that are watching this now. A lot of us miss it. Honestly, life was easier for me back then. It wasn't as stressful, even though it's stressed in a different kind of way. It wasn't as stressful as I find life today, and that's okay. It's to me, life was easier back then. Life was easy when I was just going out on patrols, coming back, eating, working out, watching movies. Life was easier. Yeah, there's the threat of dying, but you got threats of dying over here too. Granted, it's not as immediate in the present moment. For example, if I'm not paying attention to that tree is not going to kill me. We're out there, it might, but a lot of us miss it. And I think what we miss is just, it's not just the people and having that sense of tribe and belonging and purpose and fulfillment on that tiny scale. But I think what it is that we were more open to getting into flow states. And I think that's something that I don't think it's people ever talked about. I don't think people ever mentioned this. I don't talk about it too much, but it is a theory that I have, and I think that's part of it, is that we miss flow states. We miss losing ourselves to the environment, to other people, to our tribe, and becoming part of their environment. And for me, writing is that. It is a dissolution of myself. It's a to want to call it disintegrating, but it is a return to just being at ease of where I'm at, and then letting the rhythm of where the writing is going to take me, just letting it take me there. Going on missions and patrols and raiding, it's the same thing. It's a dissolution because you're not worried about how are you going to perform. And you're not worried about the people that are around you. You're trusting that they're going to do what they need to do, that you see a threat or danger on this side, you can call it out. Someone's going to take care of it, because you've trained and done it often enough that it's automatic. You're like one single entity moving through these houses, moving through these cities, through these buildings. You trust that as long as you do your little tiny part, the rest of the big picture is going to take care of. That's how rooms get cleared, how buildings get seized, people get captured. It's a flow experience. Again, on a much more intense, maybe violent, probably, I won't say long-term, maybe unhealthy way, but it is a flow state. And flow states, I think, are necessary for fulfillment, for meaning in life. Because to lose yourself to those temples and the environment is to reconnect back to something bigger than yourself. So that was my aha moment. It was thinking about why my creative process is filled with long stretches of boredom and frustrations, but then in an hour, in an instant, boom, hyper focus, intense, everything comes out. Where I don't feel like I'm myself, but something's getting channeled through me. It's because of what I went through over there when I was deployed, going to those flow states when I was in Iraq. A flow state's a flow state. And the obviousness, at least now looking at back to me, is just like mind-blowing. But that's a past moment that shaped me. That's a past moment that I don't regret. I don't wish to change, because it is helping me where I'm at now. But sometimes I wish maybe there's easier ways to teach flow moments, easier ways to get people in touch with the environment, with the tempo, what they're doing, or maybe even create their own tempo. I think there's easier ways to do it where you don't involve joining the military. It doesn't involve you kicking in someone's door or going on a patrol or going on a mission. I think there's other ways to do it. Maybe that's something that I'm trying to work on now, is how to consciously cultivate flow states like that. Anyways, thank you for listening to Story 21. Peace. Come here. Let's go. Come here.